I'm Tom. I'm a software engineer here in the Experience Center.
And I'm Zach. I'm a product designer here at the Experience Center.
And as Chris said, we are going to kind of walk you guys through what it's like to build an MVP in 6 weeks. So basically what happened was the three of us were working on another product together that didn't really have a defined timeline. And on Monday morning, Antonio came into the room that we were having a meeting in and said, hey, you guys are not going to work on that. You're going to work on this now. And this was basically a product that would allow us to share our progress on the stuff that we're working on here at the Experience Center with our stakeholders, with our business partners, and with the management team. And so he basically said, y'all have 1 week, get as much done as you can get done. And we were like, cool, we'll get right on that, boss. The only really directives that we had at the outset on that Monday morning were, we know executives use their personal devices often, more often than they use their Humana-issued laptops. So whatever we built would have to be accessible on an iPad or an iPhone. And also, the true purpose of this product would be to be radically transparent about the work that's going on in here, and make a platform that was accessible basically anywhere to share that work. So we were like, we got this. So what is step one in building a product?
Sure, I'll take that. So yeah, I think you need, we really need to take your best guess, establish a baseline, establish kind of a starting point that you can begin to kind of work off of and kind of refine, iterate, and incrementally improve the thing. So yeah, taking your best guess at things like goals and anti-goals as a team. So getting some sort of consensus here I think is important. So together we got together in the beginning and just kind of got a baseline, took some guesses, identified some possible risks. Users, those are important. Who are the users? Kind of proto users. And then yeah, just loose kind of wireframing, even whiteboarding, just really minimally kind of scrappy, just kind of imagining what could be with at least the first iteration of the software. So then with all those things kind of considered and consensus, kind of across the team gathered, it's now about going fast. How fast, you might ask? Ricky Bobby fast.
And so from a product management perspective, what does that look like? The stuff that Zach just outlined was really done in the first couple hours of that Monday morning. So my job then was to synthesize what we kind of directionally decided upon and turn those into the first user stories that were basically those best guesses. And from then on, it's like continuing to add to our backlog and ruthlessly prioritizing what is in that backlog. Since we only have 1 week to build something tangible, it was a very small backlog, but it was like we had considered every angle of what we thought we could do in 1 week. And then, of course, testing and accepting stories as they're being delivered by the development team is a huge part of the product management job here in the deck, or the Experience Center, I should say. And being really Johnny on the spot about getting that done so as not to create any barriers in development was a priority for me. And finally, we always preach about getting software in front of users as fast as you can to test those best guesses and those assumptions quickly.
So from the engineering side of things, like going fast is like kind of really where going fast is most evident. And so when we kind of set out to build this thing, like Lydia said, have something tangible in a week, the first thing that we really wanted to make sure that we did was we picked a tech stack that would allow us to go fast. So the tech stack here we chose for Relay was kind of what you see, and we were kind of intentional in doing that. Beautify is a sort of material design implementation, UI components. We chose those because we didn't want to spend time trying to build our own user interface components and save us some time there. Vue and Express are really great. Vue for the front end, Express for our back end, because they both have tooling that allows you to get up and running very quickly. We can run a command, and then in a few minutes, we have a project ready to go. And then PCF is really great just because of the speed at which we can deploy things to it and get something up and running. We don't have to wait for servers to be built. We don't have to wait for cloud resources to be provisioned. We can just go. The next thing that we started on was, like Lily mentioned, we knew that executives were going to be using this from their personal iPhone or iPad, which means that in order for them to access it, to be accessible on those devices, it needed to be exposed to the internet so that they could get to it. The kinds of things that we are showing in Relay, product updates, status type things, are not always things we want the general public to know. So we wouldn't want just any random person to stumble upon this thing and see, oh look, Humana's building this like really game-changing thing, and here's everything there is about it. So we wanted to kind of hit the ground running. We knew that was like the first thing that we kind of wireframed up. It's like people are going to have to log in, so we could go ahead and start building that without really having to spend too much thought about it. Which kind of brings us to the next one, which is having people with familiarity. So on the Relay product team, we actually had 2 engineers who this was their first thing they worked on at Humana. So they didn't really have any background of SL or any of the other Humana enterprise services that might or may not need to be called to do this. So having people around that can speak to, well, this is how you use SL to log an associate in. Things like that was really, really important for us, because if we had to slow down to do a full-blown SL onboarding, for example, there goes our entire week right off the bat. And then the last thing here really is to identify bottlenecks in the engineering process. So one of the things that we kind of noticed right out of the gate was our continuous integration pipelines. So we probably spent 2 days trying to get these where we wanted them to be, given the audience we're trying to serve, stakeholders, in this case members of the management team. We can't have the app not work when they try to go update it because maybe we're doing a deployment. So we knew we wanted blue-green deployments so that they got a seamless user experience. We didn't want to do anything that would cause them to lose faith in the tool. That might be like, I tried to go look at your thing to see your update, but I really couldn't get it. So if you could just go back to sending me 4 blockers, that'd be great. We didn't want that to be a thing. So we really took the time to get that up and running. But like I said, it took a couple of days. And so that could have been a couple of days that we were actually building out features that deliver user value. But had we not gone through this exercise, we may not have known that that was as big of a bottleneck as it was. And so given that going fast was such an important thing for this, we haven't directly taken an action item from that example yet, but it's something that as an engineering group here in the Experience Center, we would like to address. And so we have one command to generate our products for us, hey, let's have one command that we can run to set up CI for us as well, and shrink that 2 days into 2 minutes maybe, and then really get back to delivering stuff. And then so kind of once we had CI set up and we were ready to actually start writing code and delivering stories, the next big thing was to, of course, push it and get the working software out so that users could actually see what we had built, and we could start to get that feedback around what needs to come next.
Cool. So on the design side, as far as moving fast, some things that were important, I think, to the design practice for Relay. First and foremost, I think similar to the engineering side of the house, leveraging tools that you're familiar with and you're comfortable with, and that you don't really have to think a lot about when you go to design or scaffold or prototype or do anything. I mean, it's just kind of automatic. You don't have to learn any new methods or any new constructs. So I think that was important. And I've got listed out here whiteboarding. I think the old tried and true method of collaboratively sitting around a whiteboard and wireframing things out, I think is important, just kind of in the genesis of the product and the software. But then also Sketch and Simply was used. Again, personally, that's the thing that those are the tools that I'm most comfortable with. So yeah, I wouldn't go with Figma. Figma, even though it's similar, it still has some stuff that I would maybe need to learn, not be as familiar with. So again, I think that helps you move fast using things that you're comfortable and familiar with. And then yeah, talking, kind of having conversations. I think in the first few days within this product kicking off, we began to talk to stakeholders, so management team members, and then also PMs, just about what progress might look like from a stakeholder standpoint, what they care about when it comes to product updates from a stakeholder perspective, and then on the other kind of end of that experience, how a PM might want to provide updates and communicate progress out to stakeholders. So but either way, getting those things kind of in the front within the first few days, having those discussions, and again, kind of laying a baseline to refine off of, I think is important, moving fast. And yeah, these things kind of allow you to imagine possible solutions and kind of go wide and then narrow in and on what you think might work, and then kind of refining incrementally is our way of doing things around here. So yeah, refining, refactoring, iterating off of. Yeah, and then, so I mentioned a little bit just kind of conversation with our users, so the stakeholders and the PMs. Kind of call this out again, validating with users, so the things that we build, so whether they be prototypes or software or whatever, getting that in front of people, in front of stakeholders, in front of PMs, so that we can then go back and have more informed opinions, a better understanding, a better perspective for the people that we're solving for, and making sure that we're meeting their needs. There was a scenario even in the first week that we began this product where we had in the backlog prioritized alerts for, I guess, stakeholders. So the idea is we would integrate with Tracker, and it would pump out, I guess, alerts from Tracker somehow, and then the stakeholder could see that on their product and then kind of go and maybe have a conversation with a PM. Well, we quickly realized after a few conversations with some of the stakeholder folks that really wasn't that important. So we kind of deprioritized that in the backlog, moved some things up, and yeah, I think drove kind of more impactful features and UI and whatever else. And then this is repeated over time. So we like to do things, I guess, weekly, at least on Relay, and even daily. So daily we were having conversations with product managers, and just even usability, kind of little minor like choreography things with the UI, and making sure that the flows all make sense. This was done, as often as possible, so that we don't bottleneck really the software kind of side of things and building this thing quickly. Yeah, and some pro tips, I guess, some takeaways maybe after that maybe you would walk away with after this conversation here. Kind of first and foremost, I think communication is important when you're talking about delivering software quickly, or not. I mean, I think communication is important for everything in life, not just software development. But like go have a conversation with a human being. I think that's the oldest form of UI that there is for our species. So why not do it? I think it's the most effective, efficient way of really solving problems is just having a conversation with somebody. And if you have a question, if somebody might have that answer, just go talk to them. Like, I mean, if you're slacking and they're across the room, like, come on. I just think it's easier too. So.
Another thing that Zach and I found ourselves doing quite a bit of is pairing between design and engineering. And so, like, Zach mentioned he used some tools like Sketch and Simply, but like a lot of times when we're trying to go fast, it doesn't necessarily need like a full high fidelity like comp for us to go off of. So a lot of times we would just pull the UI up and then just kind of start designing it as we built it. And Zach might say tweak this here, a little bit of space there, or whatever. But it really cut down on the time that Zach Zach would have to spend in Sketch, getting everything ready to go, uploading that to Simply, and then like shooting me over the link, just like cuts out a lot of the middle work there.
Yeah, and finally, in order to really move fast, you have to be comfortable making decisions and moving forward, knowing that you might make a mistake, knowing that given the way that we work iteratively, week over week, there's going to be an opportunity to refactor and refine. You can't get stuck in analysis paralysis. You have to produce something in a week, so you have to move forward. And being comfortable, being uncomfortable is really important. So, with that said, so we had this directive to build something tangible in 1 week, which we did. And what happened after that 1 week was we had such validation from our stakeholders, and we had PMs here in this space sort of clamoring to be able to use a product like this to provide updates to their stakeholders. So that kind of got us buy-in to allow us more time to work on this product. So this is actually, I guess, technically week 7 of development on Relay. But we were going to just show you guys quickly a demo of what it looks like right now. So, yeah. Cool. How do I?
Oh yeah, probably. This is weird.
Yeah. One sec. Your mouse.
Oh, there it is. It's over there. Oh, there it is. It's over here. All right. And then just now. Okay.
Okay, now tab.
There we go. There you go.
All right, sweet. So let me log in here. This is our QA build. So I'm doing it with one hand. So like we mentioned, actually anyone at Humana with the Humana login can access Relay. That's a security aspect of this, using a secure log-on. So basically when you sign in, no matter if you have the ability to add something and edit things in Relay as a product manager in this space, or if you're an executive or a stakeholder, just someone that's interested, you kind of see this dashboard of the different products that are basically being worked on here in the Experience Center. Each product has a card. You can kind of see that they're organized in a specific way. So for me as a product manager, I have added 2 products to Relay, so those appear first in my list. I'm following one product, so that appears second, and then just basically everything else that's in here. A lot of it, again, this is QA, so a lot of this is just test data, and so there's some silliness happening, but so it's pretty straightforward, basic card functionality. Each one of these cards is clickable, tappable. As a product manager, like I said, I can add one if I want to, but I'll go ahead and sort of like show you guys one of the things. So when I click on one of those, I get sort of like this overview screen, and all of the things that are here were sort of informed and prioritized by our stakeholders that we talked to week 1, and also having ongoing conversations with the product managers here to get their feedback on the kinds of things their stakeholders generally want updates about. So typical stuff like the name of the product, the description, any relevant links you might have. And we have some stages here in the Experience Center that we use to define where a product is in our life cycle. So you can select those. And in some cases, we have some engagements happening here that are more research oriented. So we have things like leap of faith assumption that you might be making about what you're working on, and then the ability to add goals and risks. And I think there's even there's some further things. If I go into edit mode, of course all of this is editable, and I can add barriers if there may be any barriers we've identified. And you'll notice up here, there's a tab for updates. And this is kind of where getting that feedback from our product managers here was really critical. We quickly realized there needed to be sort of a place for static information that doesn't change necessarily very much, and information that they need to update on almost on a weekly cadence in most cases. So there's some, these are all test entries, but each card has a date associated with when the update was made. I think there's one in here that's a little bit more like legitimate. So adding formatting capabilities to this was also kind of important because we know PMs tend to like send out bullet points of like just the high level stuff to their stakeholders, to the teams that care. So adding an update kind of looks like this. These are really straightforward WYSIWYGs that for now, for an MVP, works just fine. So that's kind of like the basic functionality right now of Relay. One of the other things that we identified early on was that management teams' inboxes are pretty full, so this was a way for them to sort of self-serve, but if they don't think about it, they may not go out and access this site. So we kind of built in this ability to follow products. So I'm following Movi right now, and what happens is, like Friday mornings, I'll get an email reminder that's just like, hey, a product that you follow on Relay might have gotten an update, so go check it out. And really that's the MVP version of kind of sending alerts about products. I think where we'd like to eventually get is like, if a PM makes an update, there's an instantaneous message sent out to the people who are following that product, so that they're like, oh cool, this thing I'm invested in, I can go check and see what they said, and then reach out if I need to ask questions or have any concerns about the status of the product. So yeah, that's pretty much where we are after 6 weeks. And oh yeah, that's another thing, cross-pairing was mentioned I think at some point, and it's kind of hard to tell when you log out. One of the things we do in the experience center is wear all the hats. So we actually, Zach and I paired up on designing the logo for this thing too. So it's just kind of a cool thing. Pretty much in 1 week you have to do everything. So just a fun plug. But yeah, so that's the demo of Relay. And I think really we just have time for questions. If you guys have anything, yeah.
Do you have a version of what we showed at the end of the first week?
I
have, or I guess the question is, how different is what you guys produced in the first week different now?
It's pretty different. I think all we really had was like the dashboard and the cards, sort of. And I think we had following too, like that. The email reminder, following, track of work was mostly done. But we didn't have that sort of separation between like overview and updates. That came a little bit later as we were able to kind of follow with our product managers.
We also were using out of the box Beautify components. So as far as like the aesthetic and maybe some of the function of some of the components, we kind of used that as a baseline. So the Beautify out of the box stuff, Beautify, and then that it was good enough. Like it got us to where we could like learn about how people use the thing and then refactor based off that. But yeah, I think so. All that stuff comes over blue, and it's pretty dry as far as the components and a whole lot of like movement or animation. But then yeah, we refactor off of that. So like what you saw was blue and Roboto as the font stack.
It's like a Google product.
Yeah. So yeah. It was. I think it was quite a bit different. I mean, as far as like the function, it was fairly the same. But,
yeah.
So you had to go so fast. Were there any things that you had to sort of cut out or skip over that you normally do creating a product like this?
I wouldn't necessarily say that we normally do. We kind of treat each product as its own thing. So it's really important to have those conversations with users and stakeholders really early on to identify the priority. I mean, from my perspective, we had to deprioritize quite a bit, knowing that there might be a chance we would get to things, but there might also not be a chance we would get to things. Like luckily, the efficacy of like what this is doing for us has been kind of proven out. So we're still developing it right now. I don't know, maybe, do you have any thoughts about that, Tom?
Yeah, I would just really agree that like it comes down to the prioritization. So there are things that we would like to do that we haven't punt on, just because there are more important things now. So like maybe some of the manual steps that PMs have to fill in when they initially create their product, like we could maybe do better to automate those, other things like that. But in terms of like how we build these things out, no, like we've kind of followed the pattern throughout everything that we've built.
So you all have, seems like two users for this, like product managers and stakeholders.
Yeah, pretty much.
Whose problems is it primarily solving? Solving PMs or solving stakeholders?
Yeah, it's funny because the directive from on high was we need a way for stakeholders to check up on what we're doing, and that isn't sending emails that get lost, that isn't, putting together PowerPoint decks and things like that. I think initially it was like a from on high sort of directive, but as we started working on it and started talking to the product managers about how they do things when it comes to keeping progress updates in their stakeholders' purview, it's become kind of both. Like it's almost like there's a duality happening because what we were doing before was sort of like writing up a synopsis of the product we were working on each week. Then that was being passed off to one person to put it together, formatted the same way, and then that was being passed off to Antonio to send out to whomever, which was like quite a bit of manual labor, like, and a lot of, pre-planning, like, okay, Thursday, let's all have our slides to so-and-so so that they can put them together, and it was just like this whole kind of shuffle. So I think this is an effort to automate some of that, and also like, if you're thinking about how you keep track of those updates, if they're getting emailed, then you're like, okay, well, let me pull my phone out and log into Good and like go through that whole thing and try to find, okay, it's a PowerPoint deck and I'm on my phone. How do I really look at this? Whereas now it's like we have a responsive website that they can go to just go check anywhere they are. So I have a feeling adoption by the stakeholders might be slow just because they're accustomed to a different way of receiving updates. But I think once it's kind of, once it has some momentum, I think it'll be used a lot more. Yeah.
So in doing some like user research and having those conversations, did you come into any sort of situations where you had pushback from stakeholders on some of the features that you had, and how did you navigate that pushback if it was something that wasn't like a root cause? How that makes sense? Like if you were fixing a root cause, they were applying something that didn't make as much sense in the long run. Did you have to shepherd or guide or kind of firmly push or anything like that?
Yes, the question was, did we get any kind of pushback from stakeholders about the direction we were going in, and what did we do? We didn't really get much pushback. In truth, we are going to be doing another round of testing with stakeholders, probably like next week. The initial conversations that we had with them were very interesting because we had like Heather Cox, who is our leader in DH&A, kind of saying like, I'm really interested in like granularity, but I think that having like sort of a top level view and a mid level view and like a really like on the ground view will be very beneficial to almost everyone who might be using the product. And when we talked to some of our other stakeholders who are not inside of the DH&A, they were like, I just kind of want to see like red, yellow, green, like, and like budget. Some of the budget stuff's really interesting. And part of this product is also, like, one of our goals was to sort of promote our process too, to like share with MT not only what we're working on, but kind of the way in which we work. We didn't get a ton of pushback necessarily, but there's a little bit of subversion happening, and that we're like, we really want to use the language that we use here. We want to use the processes that we use here to make it clear, so that if those questions do come up, we can kind of educate. It's like a forum for education as well. So I would say we haven't gotten pushback yet, but we are going to be doing actual like usability testing probably next week. So yeah. Yeah. Anybody else? Thanks, guys.
See you.